Hi, so it's time for the lesson 3 recap. The starting point for this is an application where we have a character controller. We can move around. Um, I also have like the background view. In my version, I actually implemented the ground check, so I can't jump forever, but that doesn't matter. Um, what the goal of the lecture was to integrate frame-by-frame sprite sheet animation and make it into a collectible. So I will show you how to do that, and I will retrace the steps that we also did during the lecture. So first step was to just go to the sprites folder, and here I created another folder for the collectible, and then I just drag and drop a file I have on my system into there. And I prepared this rotating star sprite sheet. During class we used another one, but um, this one can be used to just show you all the things. And we can see this is an image that has just 8 frames of a star that is spinning. And the first thing we need to do is we need to tell Unity that that is actually multiple images. And we do that by changing the sprite mode here from single to multiple and applying that. So now Unity knows, okay, this is not just a single image. We want to get multiple sprites out of that. And we can use the sprite editor to do that. And we need to slice it. So during class, and I also mostly do that, I just slice by cell count, and we can count 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are 4 columns, 2 rows, and hit the slice button here. And we can already see like those are these red squares are what the frames of our animation will be. And if that worked correctly, here we can see all the sprites that we now have, and you can see this image, like one image file, was sliced into a collection. So after doing that, it's time to actually get this into the game. And for that, I created an empty, and I will just now call it collectible and reset its position so that it is at position 0, 0. And I will create a prefab out of that and work in a prefab because probably I will want to have more than a single collectible. So I just put it there, like next to the house, double click on it. And as we already did with the player, I prefer to have the visuals in an extra child object. So I create another child object, right click, create object, call this visuals, and add the sprite renderer component. So a sprite renderer is what is used to actually display an image. So now we still can't see anything, but we have the sprite renderer component. To see something, we need to attach a sprite here. And to do that, I click this lock button up here, which means this inspector window won't change in the time this lock is pressed. And I can just navigate to my collectible and have it here. And now I drag and drop the first frame of that collectible into here, have that, and then I unlock it again. As you see, it jumped around immediately, which is not necessarily what I want. Okay, and now we can see I have a huge star, which is not actually what I want, but is where I can show you the next thing. So this image is 977 pixels tall, and we have it 2048 pixels wide. And here we can see up there the pixels by unit tells us that every 100 pixels is 1 unit in Unity. 1 unit in Unity is, in my case, is I think 2 of those squares. When we're using 3D things, it's very often used as a meter, but it's just an arbitrary unit. But we can change how big such a thing displays. And I know that I probably want my star to be half a unit tall. So here I now set it on the 977 and apply that. And as we can see, it became way smaller. If I put this collectible up there, it's now here. Actually, this is still a little bit too large for me. I want it twice as small. So I go in here and I just multiply this field. You can multiply in almost any number field in Unity. And now I have a star in the size that I wanted it, and I can just put it somewhere there. And if we go onto the prefab, we can also say, okay, everything changed here. It's no longer as tall, and I'll play the game for now, and we see we have this star here. But it's not moving yet, and also it's not doing anything. So, okay, let's start with the fun of animating something. So I will open this collectible prefab, and we have the visuals thing here. And the thing I want to animate is the sprite renderer. So I want these visuals to change and not anything else, which means I put the animator onto the actual visuals. So add a component, add an animator, and this component controls the states of the animation actually. So we don't only need an animator, we also need an animation controller. As you can see here, it is none, but if we click in here, no, there's none there. But we can create one. So I will create a new folder, call this one animation, amazing, and create a new folder in here, which I will call controllers. And in this controllers folder, I right click and generate an animator controller. So what we want to have is this animator controller, and for my collectible, I'll just name it the same thing as I named my collectible itself. And here I can now drag and drop this animator on animation controller onto the animator component, and we have it here. And if I double click it, this thing opens. So that's just setup. The next thing I want to have is actually add an animation to this animator controller, to this animation controller on the animator. Lots of words. And to do that, the quickest way I know of, or the, like, let's say simplest way I know of, is to get the animation window. If we click up here on window, animation, and then animation, we get this timeline here. Now if I now click on the visuals, like have the actual game object selected, which has the animator, we can see here to begin animating visuals, create an animation clip. There is no clip yet, but we can click on create, and now we get one. So I will also create a folder for that, call that one collectible in here, and I will just call the animation spin because my star spins. So this is now an animation file that we have here. Okay, so what's next to do? We have this we now have this timeline down here. I will move that up here so that I can at the same time have the timeline there and also go through my project. Go to the sprites, to the collectible sprites, and I will just take all these single frames of my animation and drag and drop them in there. And we have this little play button here. If I press that, you see it's spinning very fast. Why is it doing that? Because here, the sample rate, if you don't see that, you can get it by clicking here onto the onto those three buttons, and there's this menu, and there's this show sample rate button. And if you press that, you can actually set the sample rates, so the FPS of the animation, which does not need to be exactly the frames that the game is rendering at, but at how the animation is played, and can manually set it. And I created 8 frames, and I wanted it to be at 12 FPS, so I will set this at 12. Right? So if I now play the button, you can see it is spinning and going through all these frames. but it's doing so way slower because I slowed down the actual sample rate. And that is my that is now my animated thing. So if we play the game, we should see this star that we have here. It is already spinning, which is pretty nice. We already have something animated. Okay, and in the next step, we wanted it to spin, then be idle for a moment, and then spin later on. So we look at the animator. Great, so time to look at the animator and at creating another animation. So I'll go back to my prefab and click on the collectible. And I want a second animation. So if I click onto the visuals, which have the animation, and we still have this animation window, on this drop-down thing, I can create a new clip. And this time, this clip, I will put it into the animation folder, onto the collectible again. And I will just call this one idle, which should be just one frame in my case, where nothing happens. And now there are two animations on our star. And for this one, I'll just go to the sprites that I have, go to the collectible, and I put the first frame, which is just this idle frame. But I want this to set the animation to a certain length. So here, I put these on 12 frames per second again, like the previous one. And now I know to have like exactly a second, which is the length I will want to have, I need to put it on 12 frames. So I take this first frame and I Control C, Control V, can create a new frame. So I take it, Control C, I go here to the 12th frame, and then I Control V again. So now this animation exactly takes a second. And you don't see a lot yet, but it will come in handy later. So I have the second long animation, and now let's have a look at the animator. This is the animator of our collectible. And we can see we start at the beginning, we go into the spin state, and then there's the second state, the second animation that we have, which is the idle state. So what do we want to do? We show the spin, and then after the spin, we want to transition into the idle state. So I right click there, make transition, go to the idle state. Then I want to set an exit time. If we click on the transition, we can see the settings here on the right side in the inspector. And this now has an exit time, which I will put on 1. So now, after one running through this animation once, it will transition into the next step. And this transition should take 0 seconds, so 0 time, nothing, because I have two kinds of frame-by-frame animations. I don't need to do any interpolation. So I will do that, and then also go from the idle state back to the spinning state and do the same thing. At the end of the animation, with a transition time of 0, just go back. So what this should do is we should spin, then wait for a second, and then should spin again. But let's check. So back to our scene, press the play button, and have a look. And as you can see, our star spins, then it stays, and then it spins again. So this is basically our first frame-by-frame sprite sheet-based animation system. Great. So, but to make it a collectible, we actually need to add some code now, because nothing happens yet. And to do that, I will open the collectible as a prefab here, and let's talk about what we actually need to do. So for something to be collected from our player, we need to detect some kind of collision. And for collision detection, we already know we need those collider components. So what I will do is add a collider, a 2D collider, onto the collectible. So that one I now do on the actual collectible and not on the visuals. The reason is, if I do it like that and I can set up a collectible, I can easily just change out the visuals without anything else changing. So in here, I want a box collider 2D. Always make sure if we're working with 2D, always take the 2D version. They are not compatible with each other. So now I have box collider, and if I press this button, we can see how big it is. And this is a little bit too big for me, so I grab those handles, make it smaller, so that it is just a reasonable size. And now, since I don't like those offsets, I just set it at 0, 0. And I think this is a good collider for our case. So if our player touches any of those things, we want to actually collide, collect this. And to do this, we will use the trigger thing. So if you see here, there's this is trigger field. So if I press this, now the box collider does not actually collide with anything in case for this physics system, but we can use it to detect if something entered this zone. And what we want to do is whenever anything for now enters this zone, I want to just delete it, kind of collect my star. But unfortunately, we now need another script, and I will call this script collectible. Great. Created the script, and I opened it in Writer again. I'll get rid of all these unused imports for now. Also don't need those things. So we used a box collider and we made it trigger. So what we can do, we can create the onTriggerEnter 2D function. So call it onTriggerEnter 2D. If you are more skilled than me, you type differently. Well, what the function? Public void onTriggerEnter 2D. That is getting a collider 2D. So this gets called whenever anything enters our trigger. But right now, there is nothing else but our player. So we can simply put this code in here. Destroy game object. So what this line of code means, whenever something enters this trigger, destroy this game object itself, which will, in our case, make the... What would those videos be without a package delivery? Okay, I created the script, and I now just have to add the script onto the prefab, and let's see if that worked. So, hit the play button, can walk around, there's stars here, you see I run into it and it disappears, which is cool, because it means we can already play stuff here, collide with it, and then collect it. So, to make this a little bit more interesting, I now create a lot of copies of this object, and almost like in a real game, I'll just create a street of some of those things. Also move this one around. While moving around those, always make sure that you're moving around the whole prefab and not just the visuals. During the class, we saw what happens then. Some weird behavior where it seems like some of those things are sharing the same collider. You can see I can run through that, collect all of them. So that works pretty fine. Amazing. But there was a last thing we did during the lecture, which was actually create some kind of manager component where we can collect them together. So I'll do that again. I'll create an empty game object right now, and this will just be our collection manager for now. And the goal with this object is to have something that keeps track of how many collectibles we already have in our game, collected in our game. And we need another script for that as well. So I will call this script collection manager for now. You can call it whatever you like again. And I'll open the script. And in there, I had like a very simple thing. So this collection manager had a private integer collected here it is items, I just call it collected, and also just set it to 0 for now, which is a field where we store how many things were collected, and then there it has one function which is called public void collect, and in there I just add one thing to collected, and during class we also logged the currently collected thing. So almost like the IDE suggested it, I will just call it collected stars and use string interpolation to also get collected in there. Oh my god. Great. So anytime this function is called, this variable is counted up once, and then we print out that we collected something. But now, of course, we need to somehow call this thing. And during class, we used Unity events for that, but I will, in this video, I will do a little, something a little different, because you mentioned during class, it seems a little bit odd that we have to like then drag and drop the Unity events in the editors. So let me show a different way how to do that. Because we can also do this with something called an event and delegate. So I can create a public delegate void, and I will just call this this one collected, or on, actually better would be on collectible collected, right? And we can have a second thing. We can have a public static event which gets one of those things. So now this is a different way to do that. Now with this public static event, the class itself, the collectible, has something called a C# event, which wants something of this form here. Which means when destroying this thing, we can say on collectible collected, then add this question mark, which just checks if anybody's actually listening, and if nobody is listening, nothing will happen, and then invoke it. So whatever is listening with a callback that has this this shape will then execute it. And now we come to the last thing on how we can actually make this work. So let's go into the collection manager, and in here we can actually create a start function. So here private void start. So this comment is important that it's actually start and nothing else, because start only triggers once those things are back. And now we can say, okay, this event is static, so it's not on any game object, but it is on the collectible class. So here I can say collectible dot, now this event on collectible collected, and I can add a function to that to this that should be executed whenever this event is invoked somewhere. Don't worry if it sounds a little bit complicated. I guess you will cover that later during this semester, but it's a little bit prettier way about doing this whole thing. So in here, plus equals, and then we use the collect function that we have here. Very important, there are no brackets here or anything. We just refer to this function to be added in here on the start function. And if we now go back to our scene, let's see what's happening. So we walk through there and we trigger through there, and of course nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? Because we did not add the component. The same thing as every time. So add the component so that the script actually gets executed, run through the thing, and you can see collected start. So I have a typo in there as well, but this thing gets triggered. And I will now say they're collected stars so that it is actually correct. But different than how we did it in class. During class, we had to like drag and drop some of these events. Now this is done in code. So there is a little bit of an advanced concept, but it should work. Okay, so let's have a look. We have 1 star, 2 stars, 3, 4 stars, 5 stars. So I probably already still have like 2 of those things here. Yes. So I move this around here, make this a full game, and this is the last thing for today. Now we can collect it, and the state of how many things we collected gets saved